Hello everybody and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Background Information. We are doing a character profile and it's going to be about Elaine Viper, who is one of my members of the Viper clan. She turns up in both Viper in the Shadows, where she's been herself, in Ancient Venom, where she's been herself, and the Bat and the Snake, where she takes a much more interesting role, and then in my most recent book, Time to Wed, where she sort of gets a good ending, I suppose. So this is going to work how my character profiles usually work, which is I give you a quote, tell you a little bit about them from a creator's point of view, then give you a brief character profile. Now, with the Viper Clan members, all of them have a more detailed character profile on my Patreon, and you can actually have a look at them for just $1. In fact, a lot of stuff on my Patreon you can look at for just $1 sponsorship a month. So I have the links to it in the description, and also have the links to I've put Bat in the Snake in the description, and you'll see the picture there as well to advertise that book that she's in. So, and also is for the drawings of her. One of the first big things I did for Pride Month a couple of years ago was draw my Viper Clan members that were in the LGBTQ plus spectrum, and because she's aromantic and that's her main trait, I drew Elaine as a lion in my weird lion style and also in my dragon style. And I have to admit, I think I prefer the dragon version of her, but that's the image you'll see. But anyway, let's get into this. Then there is Elaine. I mentioned once the thought of her looking for a noble partner, and she nearly knocked one of my teeth out. She's quite the rebellious thing, even now. She gets arrested frequently for not wearing appropriate clothes, and if it weren't for Mother, she'd have run away to join some crazy women elsewhere, screaming for equal job opportunities or other such rubbish. Quote from Ancient Venom, and from Tybalt, if you hadn't guessed. This is Elaine, my bisexual, aromantic feminist from Viper Clan, who had a lot of learning and growing up to do when she moved away, but was initially spending her time trying for equal rights, but doing everything she could to piss off her brother Tybalt. The pair butt heads often, but Elaine is still an understanding sister and certainly does what she can to protect Celine. She gets into a lot of trouble from her habits and her relationships with other women, but she does mellow out and even finds herself conflicted in one situation, seeing things from both sides and hating it. So Elaine has a lot of work as she lives. Initially, I really hated her, but I have respect for her when she sticks to her principles or when she can see the situation in a more balanced light. But I really hated her using Penny and not even trying to look for her after Tybalt removed her. So you'd understand that if you read Ancient Venom. I did do a short about Penny and what happened after that. I did a censored version for DeviantArt, so you can read that for free on my DeviantArt page. And then I have the full uncensored version on my Patreon, but you have to pay for that. Only $1, so it's not too bad. Now, let's get into her profile. Name, Elaine Viper. Position, vampire. Story first featured in Viper in Shadows, major roles in The Bat and the Snake and Time to Wed, as well as a strong role in Ancient Venom, but she does turn up in several books such as The Feathered Snake and Tatzelworm, mainly because they've got her kids involved. Role, secondary protagonist in The Bat and the Snake. Gender, female. Description, tall at 5'8", broad shoulders with a C-cut bust and broad hips. She has long strawberry blonde hair that she likes to wear in a French plait and beautiful amber eyes like her father. She looks to her father's descriptions like his mother, and she definitely has a stronger build than her own mother, with a look as if she could wrestle anyone. She has the lightning strike eyebrows of her family, and she has the look of her brother Tybalt in that she wears a tough and arrogant expression all the time. She also has a very elegant edge to her, and when you look at her, you see someone who is noble and elitist, really. Round the Veil abilities. Like all vampires, she's got the typical ability to turn into a bat and fly, drinking blood to survive, and hypnotising prey when she needs to, using pheromones to control others. But because of their mother, they all have a little more tolerance to being in the daylight. In fact, they tend to walk around in daylight without too much issue. And she's also got a little bit of extra something thanks to what happens with her in the relationship department, which you'd have to sort of read time toward, I think, to really get. Master herself, personality often considered stuck-up and arrogant by others, with her cold demeanour to match. Tybalt's, Elaine has always kept a protective manner up, and air of control because she had to. Growing up when women had no place but the home, raised by a father who respected all and a mother who was a feminist, Elaine inherited her mother's tough attitude and nature of doing everything for herself and perhaps being a bit too proud to ask for help. She hates people acting chivalrous. She likes to do whatever she can to keep people thinking of her as like a man in equality, and indeed that was her general manner. Elaine did whatever a guy could because she felt she could, including swearing, fighting, yelling, and startling Noel and Gaston by proving she could pee standing up too. Elaine always protected other women. Though, if she saw a woman in trouble or a girl that needed to read, she would help them, even if it cost her ridicule or trouble. She is self-righteous in this manner, but has a surprisingly caring streak, but hideously stubborn. Relations: daughter of Theo and Adelia, younger sister of Tybalt, Gaston, and Noelle, twin sister of Theodosius, elder sister of Celine, Odette, Beauregard, and Theodora. Didn't want to put in a little long bit about this because it's such a big family. History. Born the first of twins and the first daughter, her entrance to the world was easy, but her brother's was not. Adelia held on to Elaine tightly as she struggled to give birth, and she believed that her determination to survive and get through the birth was passed on to Elaine, and from that beginning Elaine was stubborn. As a child, Elaine refused to let herself be told she could not do anything because only boys were supposed to do that. From having wrestling matches with her brothers to going and playing around in mud, she was fearless, climbing where her brothers would not, taking on all bullies, and she even led her brothers through the caves beneath the island to find the pirate treasure hidden within. She also bit a werewolf that was bullying people and made friends with Penelope, a banshee that everyone was scared of talking to in case her voice killed them. Of course, that's just superstition. Elaine turned at 15, normal for girls, and then demanded she go to the academy. However, she was not allowed to go, and so her father hired a private tutor to help her out, so she was still educated. It was the first time Elaine ever realised that she could not do what the boys did, and when she was wandering about the library, she spotted a pamphlet that Penelope had dropped. It was written by a suffragette from the English Vale, and it excited Elaine to read it. She beckoned Penelope to take her to one of these meetings, and it was here that she met Anne-Marie, a lesser noble who was fighting for female equality in the Vale, and where Elaine had her first crush. It was an intellectual crush. She admired this woman and went to every one of her meetings with Penelope, desperate to learn more about the matters. Anne-Marie developed a writing friendship with Elaine, and the pair of them sharing information and meeting up together when they were at noble events. But then one day Anne-Marie came to visit and say goodbye to Elaine, informing her that her family had rejected her, and so she would be going to the American Vale to preach her views. Elaine was distraught, but Anne-Marie gifted her something upon her departure, a small kiss that was Elaine's first. But this time Elaine was 17, and all the young male vampires were after her, but she ignored all of them and violently rejected them for a while. But she was startled when she began to find the balls as great opportunities to get to know other women, wanting improvement, and she even found a few women interested in a kiss, which Elaine felt could be secret code perhaps for their unity. But then she learned that Penelope was attending a special kind of women's meeting, and she wanted to go too. It was a meeting for lesbians and women that dressed like men because they wanted to be like men. It was fascinating, and even more so to learn that Penelope was attracted to women. But the meetings also seemed to slip into something sexual, and it confused Elaine, until Penelope explained to her that this was a kind of ritual to prove that joy could be had without men, reclaiming the power of their sexuality, and indeed through Elaine refused. Reassuring she would watch Penelope most of all. It was all inevitable that she would agree to try with Penelope. The pair became lovers, daring to steal erotic moments within the household and risking detection. Elaine, though, was not in love, not even really romantic over the situation. All she knew was that this was her choice, and there was pleasure, and she did not need to swoon beneath a man to feel it. Things took a dangerous turn, however, when upon one of these meetings, after Tybalt took over, Elaine and Penelope were indulging in the final act, what would be described as intercourse between women, whereas before it had been more exploratory and foreplay. Tybalt and his new thugs broke in. Elaine was terrified, as were all the women, which were sent back to their families and informed they should never meet up again, and informed should they meet up again they would be removed. But Elaine never saw Penelope again, never knew she became one of Tybalt's torture victims. But Elaine would never forgive him for ruining it anyway, and she would remain stern in trying to get full equality for women until something startling appeared thanks to Celine. Final comments. She's one of those characters I did not know how I was going to do a relationship for her. As she's aromantic, but curiously things of her and Tonoak really just evolved as I was writing. She has a fuller profile on Patreon for my Patreon supporters with just $1 a month or more, but this was a more condensed version, as well as her first, like all Viper Clan members for Patreon sponsoring $20 or more are also on there. Next time I'll talk about Tonoak. Thank you. Bye.